I have a question kind of around, what are the areas maybe in your lives that you've felt burned out, or you see maybe in other pastors, or what are those areas that kind of bring out burnout? And maybe there's something that you'd like to share about, like, just, hey, I've been in certain situations where the more I got into that situation, or the more I had to go into committees, or whatever, the case may be, I started to feel that burnout. What are some of those areas that maybe you guys have kind of, felt that burnout?
Yeah. I've seen it manifested a couple of different ways. One is, in a context where you're beating your head against the wall on a certain problem or ministry need or whatever, and you just feel like you can't make any headway. It's if it's one step forward, it's two steps back, if you're making any progress at all. And when you just are at that consistently, week or month or even year after year, it just wears you down. And so I found that's one place where I've seen it, but I've also found it on the other end with a rapid pace of change, with having so many different things. If you're, as pastors, we're dealing with the administrative side of things, the ministry and spirituality side of things. We're trying to manage our own family life and maintain some sort of healthy Sabbath rhythm for us, and taking care of our families and all of this stuff. If we find ourselves in a place where we just get overwhelmed by trying to have our too many plates spinning at once, that leads to burnout. And so one of the things that's kind of and this is a leading edge for me personally, I'm still investigating, learning, and figuring out how this applies to me, but is that maybe the solution to burnout, I've always thought of it as being kind of, I just need more rest. I need to take a Sabbath. I need to have a day off, or I'll go on a retreat, a spiritual retreat, just to kind of renew and reconnect with God. And there's definitely a serious piece of that is you got to be spiritually healthy yourself. We end up giving out of ourselves, and we don't pour back in and connect with the Lord and connect with our calling, and that's what really energizes us in ministry. But the other side of it is, if I'm split in my work between all of these different things, and I just can't, seem to I'm just inching everything forward one piece at a time, that's a very different place from being able to exert my full energy towards something that's really important. And so if I can find a way to sort of set aside some things, or take your task in a way that if I can pour my whole self, my whole energy into something that I know that I'm called to do, whether that's on an administrative level or on a preaching piece or a spiritual care piece, a crisis situation that's going on in some church member's life. It doesn't have to be necessarily one category, but one of those places where I'm acting out of my gifting and what God has done in me, if I can exert my whole energy there, that really energizes me even when I'm at work. And so it's not just a matter of needing to get away from work, it's that you need to be doing good work.
Yeah, that's really good.
Man, that's so good. I would probably say I do a pretty good job of having intentional moments selfishly for myself, selfishly for me and my wife, selfishly for us as a family with our daughters. I feel the burnout really starts to sink and set in when I try to function as the leader that I am not. So if I try to duplicate myself, whether it's through my preaching, through my serving, speaking at events, if I try to articulate, present myself as maybe some other pastor leader that I'm trying to reflect or be like, I find that I begin to feel really worn and tired because I'm trying to fabricate something that I'm not. I'm trying to duplicate a ministry that God hasn't called me to do. And so I think my intentionality comes from the fact that, like, run in your lane, operate in how God has uniquely wired you for your leadership context, instead of trying to fabricate something on your own. And so I'm reminding myself of that at times. And maybe we'll get to this in a bit as far as like some of the remedies that we have for ourselves personally with burnout. And so I feel like I can get really good at that part, but the part that I maybe need to, kick myself in the rear end at times is to say, okay, this is who God created you to be in your context at your church with your people. Stay in that lane and operate well from there instead of fabricating something on your own.
I think part of the burnout, pre-burnout, is really trusting that God has called you to do what you're doing, right? Like we represent the senior pastors, the senior leaders, and we can't forget, right? Because when you're running at an unsustainable pace or you're in burnout, like the first things that go are like your passion, right? Passion and clarity around the calling, because now you're just reacting and you're trying to figure out. And so, over the last 5-6 years, and, even in the last 2 years, I have to remind myself that God has called me to do this.
Yeah.
And he's given me a specific assignment to a specific area in the city, specific congregation. There's no need to look outside, right, at what others are doing. I need to figure out what God has called me to do so that I can navigate through that, even though it's going to be a decision that maybe half the congregation, right, is not going to agree with, or, right, I'm going to get a lot of pushback. And so rather than retreating from that, it's just been this, okay, if this is what it's going to lead to, if I'm not going to make the decisions, if I'm going to run at an unsustainable pace, if I'm not going to pause, well then, how do I combat that? Well, then I need to trust first and foremost. God has called me to do this. Like, I'm not out of the game yet. So, God, I'm seeking you through, right, all of the spiritual disciplines, whatever we lean heavy towards, right, where God really connects with us. But it's just trusting that God has called us. He's put us where he's put us for such a time. And it's like, okay, I'm going to trust it. I'm going to make a decision with some confidence, knowing that, this is the best one. But I think that's been so good, man. It's just been reassuring that God has said, hey, this is still your assignment. Yeah. And you're the man, right? Yeah, you got to do it. You've got to make the tough call when nobody else wants to make the tough decision. So just trust that I'm with you. Trust that I'm going to guide you every step of the way. So that's been helpful, man, for me personally.
That's really good. That's really good. I think kind of my own thoughts on that are exactly what you guys were saying, as far as, what are the things that you're going to do in intentionality? One of the words I like to use are 2 words: rhythm and routines. So, there's things I'm going to do every week. There's things I'm going to do every month. There's things I'm going to do every year. Things I'm going to do every couple of years, right? And so I've got those rhythms and routines built into my day or my week, so that I'm connecting with the Lord. I'm doing these things, and so I can run at that sustainable pace. One of the things I've tried to do pretty consistently is, I love hiking, doing that kind of stuff. And so Mondays is my day off. And so Mondays is like, all right, I've got to really, really focus in on spending that time and being intentional. Because if I'm leading from empty, right, it's not going to be effective. So, and a lot of what you guys are saying on that part. The other thing I would kind of add is that for me, one of the things I've really tried to do is kind of find individuals in my own life that kind of serve as mentors or people that I can confide in. Usually they're older than me. I've got a couple of people through the Barnabas Network who I've been able to just kind of, hey, just let me sit under your leadership. Let me kind of be mentored by you. And have them ask me the difficult questions. And I think that's one of the things that's sometimes as a leader, it's hard to do, to kind of submit myself to another authority. And so, but to say, hey, ask me the tough questions, ask me how I'm doing spiritually, ask me, how I'm feeling, and then just being very honest and vulnerable about what I'm going through. And then having those individuals there has been one of those things that's been really refreshing to me, because I know that, man, if I'm going through it, I can just say, hey, this is where I'm at. And another part of that is, I've been kind of in and out of counseling since I was probably about 13. So, finding a counselor, having that individual that I can, pour out, yeah, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's going, I'm going through, prior to, reaching that part where I'm just like completely burned out. Because at that point, it's difficult. There's a book called Leading from Empty, and I cannot remember the guy's the author's name, but the recovery process from just that burnout, can last a long time, and so if we can mitigate that, as much as we can at the beginning, I think that's a healthy response to kind of some of the tensions that we go through. So for me, the counseling part is a huge, a huge game changer.
Man, that reminds me, and I love your vulnerability in that, because so I get to serve as chaplain with our local fire department and police department, and I'm a part of a team called the CISM team. It's Critical Incident Stress Management. And so, as a volunteer in that role, I feel it's vital for me, after some sort of critical incident that I get called to sit with these first responders, because their job is extremely important and necessary, and we want those individuals to be in it in the long haul. Like, we want them to be healthy in their service for a long time. I feel this conversation is necessary for pastors, leaders, in this point in time, because it's almost as if a critical incident has just happened, or we're in the middle of a critical incident of some sort. And all of our contexts can bring a various critical incident that we might be facing. But what we do is when we go to respond to these critical incidents, we sit everyone down and we run through everyone's vantage point of that incident. And then we go back around, and one of the questions I ask is, I always feel like a jerk asking this question because it seems like just kind of a jerk question, but like, what bothers you most about this? And then we go around and we get to hear like what bothers each of those first responders most. And I feel like we're having that conversation because there's an importance to our jobs as leaders and pastors, telling the greatest story ever that's so life-changing for not only us and our families, but for the people that get to hear it throughout the week. And so we want to be in this for the long haul. And so we have to have various outlets, whether it's a counselor or it's like-minded pastors, which we all should be like-minded, right? But a conversation like this is so vital to us because I don't know about you. I want to be in this for the long haul, for the sake of my families, for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of the families that attend the church community that I'm a part of. And so I think this is huge for a time like this. You said for such a time like this.
And what you're saying is interesting because I don't know that we've seen the end of this season of burnout. Like I think this year we're stepping into the aftermath of almost 2 years of like all the grind, all the hard work, the decisions, the lonely moments, right? And so
38% are thinking about quitting their jobs. Isn't that what it is?
Pastors, so it's this idea like there's not a better time to have these conversations. There's not a better time. Let me just kind of share. Stepping into this year, we've got some things on our plate as a church. We've got some vision, projects, goals we want to reach, and also going through this personal development as a leader, right, pastor, and so purposefully, it's like I need to be in smaller circles even more than before because I'm spinning more plates this year, right? And I think it's at a sustainable pace, but just give it a couple of months. And because of that, exactly what you're saying, like I need to be in these groups. I need to be in these conversations. I need truth tellers in my life. I need people that can ask me hard questions and just regular questions, like just how's life doing? How's it going? And so, I think this is the time now. I mean, why wait until it's too late to begin having these conversations? Because it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough to crawl back, whereas you can just lean into it now. Let's do it. Let's put in the work now so that we can continue doing what we're doing for the next 20, 30 years and have a good handoff,
That's good.